bathroom doors in here.
Yeah.
I'm the most
Okay.
obnoxious person ever, and I'm fully aware this is recording right now. You have an outtakes
Yeah.
reel.
Yeah. That's fine. And at times the video freezes up, just bandwidth issues probably. But anyway, yeah. Hello everyone. Today I am Chastity, and today I'm here with my good friend Anastasia. And it's been a really long time since we've talked, Anna. I've seen your social media posts, but I really have no idea what's going on with you very much. I know you're part of a new pro-life organization. You can tell me about that, how your experience as a Christian's going, just whatever you want to tell people. What's important to know?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think last time that we talked, I think it was when I was still on the board at Rainbow Pro Life Alliance, and I think it was like relatively new to me joining. So if I'm not mistaken, at that point, I wasn't a Christian yet. If it was like 3 years ago, but maybe we've talked sooner than that. I just don't remember. Like
It was a long time ago. I know that much.
in terms of this video format, anyways. I've talked to you, Chastity, more recently than
Right.
that. But yeah, you know what
Yeah.
I mean. Um,
Yeah, of
so
course.
like I don't know, like a lot is kind of different between then and now. I did end up like I connected with survivors of the abortion Holocaust in Los Angeles. When they came to DC, it was like one of the first pro-life things I did, and it happened to be the same weekend that Roe v. Wade was overturned. Um, I had gone to a couple protests. I maybe joined the movement maybe like 2 or 3 months before then. And then I go to DC for their camp and met with them. This is well before Rainbow Pro Life Alliance, by the way, so I'm backing it up a little bit. But then when I got to Rainbow Pro Life Alliance, fast forward from there, I was still in connect with people from survivors and ended up talking to a few of them individually who over time convinced me to start reading the Bible. And then from there, I was like, I'm gonna read it and then prove these people wrong. I'll have the facts so that I know like that all these people are wrong. That didn't really work. Um, but anyway, so then I've since then and now I've gotten really involved in my church. I go to a church called Hamilton Square Baptist Church in San Francisco. I am one of the junior church teachers there. So I have like students ages, or I guess grades, I should say, like fourth through sixth. We actually have graduation in a couple weeks, so I'm losing one student, and I think I'll be gaining one or two, I think. Um, so it'll be about the same size, but like one of the students is going into seventh grade, so he's going to be in the teen class. Totally digress. This isn't what we asked. I
No,
also
no,
am on the.
that's why. You know what? It's all relevant. I'm going to get myself a bottle of water over here.
Yeah, yeah. But while you're doing that, let's just keep going because I'm just gonna ramble for a second. And then I also joined the choir at my church, and I've started getting more involved in that way. And then I formally joined Survivors. That's been like the last. I became a member of my church maybe a year and a half ago. So now to about 6 months ago or so, I formally got involved with Survivors. Had like a conversation with them and figured out where I would play in, and I ended up starting a team in San Francisco. So our Instagram page is at thesurvivors.sf. We're relatively new in terms of the teams. We currently have the base is kind of in the Southern California area, so it's not really a team per se. It's kind of the main page, I guess. But then there's also South Carolina, which is around Myrtle Beach, but expands a little bit, of course. The DC area, and then San Francisco are our three teams. So I am like a pro-life missionary with survivors of the abortion Holocaust, and what I kind of do is go around and fight abortion. I do have a focus in San Francisco, which is why I still live here. As much as I kind of wish I lived elsewhere, I like my church, and I think there is work to be done here. So for the time being, this is where it seems God needs me. But yeah, that's kind of my updates, I guess. Survivors is great. It's a Christian-based organization that focuses on ending abortion, essentially, and telling people about God. So it's been really great to meet new friends and to have new. Sorry, it like did a windy wind,
Yeah, yeah. It
or
cut off
whatever
for
that
just a
thing's
second
called, like a
there.
loading screen. But anyway, yeah, Yeah, so like personal life wise, I mean, it was just my birthday a few days ago.
I
So
know.
I just turned 33, which is a fun number, I guess. It's the same number back and forth. The last one of those was 22, which sounds a lot more fun to me. And the next one's 44, which sounds a lot more terrifying, although 44 is my favorite number. So we'll
Really?
see if I,
What? Okay, now why the
God willing.
number 44? What, I mean, why
Mostly
the
because
number
my
44?
yeah, mostly because my favorite number is 4. And I mean, it started when I was a preteen-ish to be my favorite number, but it's really hard to say exactly why. I kind of just like it, if it makes sense. I don't know.
No,
There was
it's all right. Four is a good number. It's the number of
yeah,
sides in a square, and you know how important squares are to me, right?
squares. I'm a square, you know. Well, maybe I'm not as much of a square as I used to be. I look back when I was in middle
I
school.
mean,
And
you probably you see my chess videos and my scrolling checkerboard
yeah,
animation, so you know squares are my thing. That's totally my shape. Yeah, so
yeah.
yeah, four's a good number. So now you said something. You said you started reading the Bible. At what point did that start?
Yeah, so like I was a Christian. I mean, I definitely like believed I was a Christian and definitely was trying to live a Christian lifestyle. And I really do think I believed in God at this point. But when I was like middle school, maybe upper elementary, middle school into like lower high school, I kind of left the church when I was like 16, 17, 18, something like that. And kind of stopped going to things, stopped showing up, stopped really believing by the time I was in college. But I had never actually read the Bible, if that makes sense. When I was going to church as a younger person, I don't like reading, and I didn't really see the purpose in reading it. I still don't like reading for what it's worth. But it
Too bad.
just
I'm a writer.
it is what it is. But anyway, so I never actually like read through it. I had some verses memorized. I obviously read when we were like in service, and I would like open to the passage and that type of stuff, but never really got the full context of reading it through. And like, I don't think I ever like. I think when I initially intended, I just wanted to read the New Testament to prove people wrong, and even that was a big endeavor. But I started with the Gospels, and by the time I read John first, and that was like, to me, I was like, oh, I've heard this before type thing. Like everyone knows essentially the message within the Gospel of John. Probably most of us, even people who weren't like heavily involved in church, probably know a lot of the stories even. Um, but like, I didn't even realize at this point that Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John were essentially the same thing written from different people. Like I didn't even know that. Like I didn't know anything about like what was where. And this was probably late 2022, so not quite 3 years from now. It was probably like September, October, November, December, something like that of 2022 when I started reading. Um, Probably later, probably November.
Yeah,
Anyway,
so even though you don't like to read, have you enjoyed reading it?
um, I think so. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely been worthwhile. Um, I think it is something that I definitely enjoy more than reading like school books. I guess it's definitely more enjoyable than reading like a math book or something. um it's probably it's probably about as enjoyable as the few series I've enjoyed reading. I think I liked reading, trying to make sure I don't just quote a movie and say I read that. I did read most I did
I
read
know what
most
you mean. Now, for example, I read The Last Unicorn because I first saw the animated movie from 1982, and I'm like, well,
yeah.
okay, I got to read the book. And the book was longer and had a lot more details
Mhm.
than the short animated kids movie.
Yeah, yeah.
Obviously,
But
but
even like I remember distinctly, I read some Twilight books. I think I read at least one Hunger Game book. I think I read some of the Harry Potter books. Again, I'm not a huge reader, but a couple things like
right,
that. I think it was
right.
about as enjoyable as those, to be honest. I mean, it can be. There's parts of the Bible that are like really dry, but I guess those aren't as exciting as reading like a nonfiction or like a fiction book. I always get those confused, but like a made up story type book. But like ultimately, the overall experience of having read, especially through the Gospels and through the New Testament, was like a lot of like learning things and a lot of like being like really like, wow, that just happened type thing. Like I think there's some points where I just write stupid notes because my brain operates weird. I think I wrote sleigh with a bunch of Y's at one point.
Well,
In my
about that,
Bible.
how
It's
does
like,
how does how does ADHD affect your ability to read?
I think that's really what the main problem is, to be honest. So with ADHD, it's like I don't find things as stimulating as they should be, I guess. And like if something's not, and even more than that, like I think people who are more neurotypical like are just fine with the fact that they'll choose to do something that's not really stimulating because I think I mean I don't know, I only know my own brain, but I think there
Right.
are things that people just choose to
And,
do and that they
and there's
want to
no
do
neurotypicals here.
yeah. So like for me, if it's not exciting, if it doesn't like pique those parts of the brain, it's very hard to stay focused. So with ADHD, it's kind of like there's sometimes like I have a ESV Bible app that sometimes will be reading to me, and I'll listen to it. Um, there's been some times where I've tried like playing music in the background and then also reading, but ultimately then it's not, I mean, it's reading in general. It's not even just against the Bible, but in general, it's like very hard for me to stay focused. So I just try to set a goal and stick to it. And if I fall behind, try to catch up. I am a little bit behind on finishing the Bible by the end of the year, but not a lot behind, and I think it's still possible. I'm currently about 40% maybe through the Old Testament. So if I finish the Old Testament by the end of the year, then I would have read the entire Bible cover to cover. Maybe not page 1 to page 1400 or whatever, but I would have read every word that's in the book at some point. So I'm yeah, working on that.
Interesting. Yeah. See, that's very different from my experience because, I grew up reading the Bible, and in fact, my mom homeschooled me, so that the Bible was the first subject, which she thought was most important. So basically, I was reading the Bible, and I had like these Bible study homeschool materials and stuff that like there were questions I had to answer, and when I was a kid, I put some funny answers, to those questions too. Because back then I didn't really care much about it, but
Mm-hmm.
at least I've had that background since back before my memory goes. The Bible and going to church was always a big part of my life. So I guess you could say, I probably did not appreciate it as much as I should have because it was just there. I didn't appreciate it. Whereas with you, it's more of during your adulthood. When you're an
Yeah.
adult and the decision you make, that's a whole different matter because I feel like when you're an adult exposed to it for the first time, I feel like in some ways that's actually better because like when you're a kid, especially when you're a kid and you don't know how to read yet as a kid and you're hearing these things in church, I almost
Yeah.
feel like it's better to read the book yourself. And I was that weird kid that the pastor would tell us to turn to a certain Bible verse, and then I was just reading and I wasn't listening to the pastor, and he was probably full of shit anyway. So that's just it was probably better just to read the book, and I hope I got something out of it. I hope so.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think for me, like, I think that's very an experience that a lot of people had, especially if their parents were like taking them to church. It's a little different for me because my mom took me to church a few times before she left. That's a longer story, but I was basically raised by my dad most of my life, and he was an atheist. So I actually ended up someone came door to door and was inviting people like if there's any kids in the house type thing, inviting them to like vacation Bible school. And I was like, "Oh, this sounds in summer." And I was like, "This sounds fun. I want to go." And they had a bus that would pick you up. So my dad was like, "Fine, if you want to go, that's fine." So then the bus picked me up, and I went and I started going to this church kind of on my own. Um, so it was a little bit different than most people's stories of going to church as a kid. I haven't met that many people off the top of my head. I can't like name a name that like had atheist parents and went to church on their own. I feel
Right,
like I have a very unique story there.
actually, that's exceptionally rare. And another thing is if you are a child raised by atheist parents, more often than not, their parents probably would not even want them to go to church because they would
Yeah,
see it as brainwashing their child, and they would probably react to that the same way that parents object to certain school subjects being taught to people. Like
yeah.
people are very territorial of their kids, so there's a lot of atheist parents who would not have even been cool with
Hmm.
them going to church. So your
And
dad,
that's very true too, yeah.
yeah, I mean your dad sounds pretty cool. I would have liked to have met him.
Yeah. He has passed since, unfortunately, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess he also never really talked to us about politics. He never really talked to us about politics or religion. He kind of just kept his opinions to himself. I kind of have some ideas about what he believed. Like I don't know because he never necessarily said anything. He kind of wanted us to like figure it out ourselves, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, that's
But
cool.
yeah,
That's
I
really
think there
cool.
was a little bit of like, why do you want to go type feeling. Like that sounds like a waste of your time. But ultimately, like I was like, I don't know, it sounds fun. There's games, there's other kids there. I'm not doing anything else. And he's like, I guess go ahead. Um,
Right.
so yeah.
Yeah, maybe he just didn't see the point of it, but he wanted you to enjoy it if you wanted to. That sounds pretty cool. Your dad sounds pretty chill, like
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So you were with that survivors of the abortion Holocaust, that organization. So you were involved with them even before you joined RPLA and all that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I was like, I would volunteer by going to their events. I did help a little bit. I think I was still in RPLA, I think, when I helped a little bit with like our Stop DuPont campaign, which was successful, by the way. And for anyone who doesn't know, there was a late term abortion clinic that was coming into Beverly Hills. We found out about it. Like we got a copy of the lease from the landlord. Well, I don't know. I don't think it was from the landlord, but we got a copy of the lease somehow. And was able to communicate with the landlord, was able to communicate with the city of Beverly Hills, did a bunch of protests. And long story short, we were able to get the landlord to rescind their lease, and a DuPont clinic, this late term abortion clinic, will not be allowed to set foot in Beverly Hills. So there's actually, and that was just because that was with survivors, and that was something that I was pretty heavily helping with. But I wasn't officially on the team at that point. It was kind of in talks, and that was also 2 years ago, I believe. So since then, I've kind of had a lot of personal stuff I've had to deal with, and I'm just like officially coming back in. But it was like, yeah, I have done a few things with them, even with while I was with RPLA, and even a little bit before then. It was kind of one of the first interactions I had besides my local pro-lifers.
Okay, that's neat. So you've been working with survivors. You've been reading the Bible. Anything else going on?
Um, I mean, besides that, in my like I don't know. I'm a big Swiftie, so like
Yeah.
I
Oh,
went
I
to like
know.
seven.
Trust me. In fact, you may have infected me with the disease because after I
That's a
met
good thing
you,
to have.
yeah, listen, Anna. After I met you, and you had like a Taylor Swift song in just about every video, then I was getting on the iTunes and I bought like 13 Taylor Swift albums, and it's crazy. And then Blank Space became like my favorite song. So.
Blank Space is also, if I'm not mistaken, Blank Space is also Travis Kelsey's favorite song,
Who?
excluding the songs that are about Travis Kelsey, anyways. Travis
Oh,
Kelsey, like Taylor Swift's boyfriend.
oh yeah, oh yeah. So yeah,
Yeah, that's
as
his favorite song.
yeah, oh that's cool. Well, what I like about the song Blank Space is so on the official music video, it has this scene with the chess set. It has a scene with this chess set on the official music video, And I'm like, oh my God. So now every time I think of a blank square in the game of chess, I'm reminded of that song. So now that song is permanently part of my brain. And that's how it works. And then I start associating certain music with certain songs. And then when I listen to Taylor Swift, I think of you. So it all comes full circle. So
My goal in life is that anybody who knows me, anytime they hear a Taylor Swift song, thinks about me. That's my goal. I mean,
you have succeeded.
that's not really my largest goal in life, but that is a side quest.
Yeah, you have completed the side quest for at least one person. So
Thank you.
yeah.
But yeah, I saw her live 7 times last year, so that was the bulk of my excitement of 2024.
Yeah, and you always chose the good outfits when you went to the concerts.
Yeah, I take it a little seriously. I mean, a lot of people there like dress up and stuff, but it's not everyone who dresses up. Everyone probably like wears something Taylor Swift related or something sparkly. But not everyone, and even the people who do, it's not usually like full on costumes all the time. But I wore the 7 outfits I wore. Okay, let me see if I can remember these. In Paris, I wore a white dress with a veil that said "fucked in the head," which is a reference.
Oh,
to
I love that one. I love that one. She would have made such a lovely
Yeah.
bride. What a shame
What a
she's
shame
fucked
she's
in the
fucked in
head.
the head. They
But you'll
said,
find
anyways.
her.
And then also Paris, when I went the other day in Paris, I just wore a sweater that said "Go Taylor's Boyfriend," and it was like Chiefs themed. That was kind of fun with the white skirt. Not really a big deal. And then in Warsaw, I wore a shirt that said "The smallest men who ever lived," and I brought a Sharpie, and people could write their ex's name on it. And then, which was fun. Then I wore a white dress, the same white dress actually that I wore to Paris, but I altered it so it looked a little bit more like the TPPD dress. Like I altered the neckline, cut off the sleeves, type of thing like that. And then I wrote on it with Sharpie like some lyrics from all of her TPPD songs. So it's kind of like TPPD dress inspired. And then I also dressed as a clown with my niece. And we sat in the front row, and Taylor Swift like laughed at us when she first saw us. It was great. And then I finally, down to the last 2. Well, I guess if I count the viewing party, I wore kind of like a lavender haze type themed outfit, but that wasn't technically at the concert. Then I wore a gold sequin dress, which is like Fearless inspired. And then I wore, finally on the last day, a Reputation themed outfit. But I did it like Karma debut and Reputation put together. So I had a pink cowboy hat, a clown nose, pink accessories, orange painted Reputation outfit where the snakes were orange instead. So it was orange and pink for Karma. It was the cowboy hat for debut and the Reputation outfit. Kind of like a massive clown type outfit. I loved it. The people who got it loved it, but some people were like, I'm confused, but that's fine. They can be confused. I don't care.
Yeah,
but the people who got it. You know what I mean? The girlies who get it.
yeah, absolutely. And okay, and here's the funny thing, okay, because I'm in Lee Summit, Missouri, and I used to work at Hy-Vee. And now Hy-Vee is a sponsor for the Chiefs. So they are all about the Chiefs football team. And I went into this not caring about sports because I don't really care about sports much because I think chess is the only true sport because it's a sport of the mind. But but then when Taylor Swift started dating Travis Kelce, all of a sudden then I got interested and I'm like, well, like this is interesting. And so while everybody else is caring about the football, I'm like, I wonder if their relationship's gonna work out. Like I don't know why I care so much, but I want them both to be happy, like
yeah, it's like, I mean, I love when people are in love. Like it's so, I don't know, I feel so happy for people. I think that like ultimately, I mean, that's it. God doesn't call everyone to marriage. Like, it's not like we're entitled to find a spouse. But, like, ultimately, like, when people do, it's just such a beautiful thing when 2 people can come together. And, like, obviously they're just, like, dating. I mean, there's kind of rumors here and there that they're engaged secretly or whatever. But they're just rumors. We don't know. But, like, at some point, like, it does seem like he's perfect for her. It really does. And I hope that
yeah.
if that's how they really feel, like obviously we only see a certain aspect of their relationship, but
Right,
if they really
but they seem happy.
yeah,
Yeah.
I hope they seem happy.
Well, and the thing that makes it so interesting is I was happy for them, and I don't even usually like straight people. Like
That's the vibe.
well, yeah, okay, you know what I mean, right? I mean, I just I find most straight couples to be just so cliche because they're the majority. It's overdone, and it's like so when they get engaged or married or whatever, it's kind of like yeah, you and everybody else. So I don't pay any attention. But when Taylor Swift is involved, okay, now the game has changed. So they're probably my favorite straight couple.
Yeah, I hear that. That makes sense.
Yeah.
But
It,
yeah, and that's about my life there. I still work at a restaurant, which is fun. But
cool. Which
maybe at
restaurant do you
some
work
point
at?
I work at a vegan restaurant. I mean, it's a chain. But it like serves vegan burgers and like what else do we serve? I've worked there 3 years and I'm like asking silly questions. Chicken sandwiches, burgers, fries, salads, milkshakes, type of American food. It's pretty good.
Yeah, yeah. If I lived within walking distance of a vegan restaurant, I would probably apply. I probably would,
Oh
to be
yeah.
honest, because see, here's the thing: in like Kansas City, Missouri area, like in the downtown like area, then there are vegan restaurants down there. There's actually in Kansas City, like the city area. But see, I'm in a suburb. I'm in Lee Summit, and Lee Summit's kind of a whack town. So there's a lot of McDonald's, a lot of Burger King, a lot of Taco Bell. Now, my mom likes me to take her to Freddy's, and they have a veggie burger combo there, which is
I've
pretty
been there
good.
before. I've
Yeah,
gotten that
see,
burger.
yeah, see what I do is I get the veggie burger, but then I tell them no cheese and none of the Freddy sauce because it has mayonnaise. So basically, once you remove the cheese and the sauce that they normally put on it, then it's basically a vegan burger. And then their fries have the right amount of salt, and they have tater tots too. So that's kind of one of our favorite places to go in this town. But it's fine to go as a customer, but I don't think I would ever want to work at a restaurant unless it was a vegan restaurant because
Hmm.
I just would not want to be around the process of I don't even like having to stock the rotten flesh of the meat at Walmart. I don't like that aspect. You know what I mean? I got to
Yeah,
do my job, but it's not a
that's
pleasant
something I said
experience.
before too. I don't think I could work at a non-vegan restaurant. Maybe if I was like a I mean, I feel like I'd have an issue anyways, but like I feel like I could get over it if I was like a server or if I was just taking orders. But like I don't think I could work in close proximity to like the cooking process if it was animals. I don't know, even bringing out the animals, but like whatever. I
Yeah,
think I could deal with it. But yeah, I have a lot of respect for like I mean like a lot of people like be mean to vegans who work in like animal industries or like places that are making their money off of animal products. And like I get
yeah,
that. Like, I really do get, like, in an ideal world, we should try to work at, like, places that are more vegan. But ultimately, we live in
right.
a capitalistic society. And I just have a lot of, like, love and respect for those that are, like, living a vegan lifestyle and, like, kind of stuck in these jobs where they're
Right.
having to deal with this so much. Like, I mean, everyone's got to pay their bills. And I hope that they're able to find a better job at some point. But I wish people would stop, like, harassing
Yeah.
them because ultimately, like, you
Well,
got to do
yeah, yeah. It's kind of like for example, well, for obviously, being vegan in this world is very hard. And obviously,
Mhm.
Walmart was the only company that would hire me after I was rejected by everybody else in town, after I lost my high V job. So I didn't really have much choice in the place I work. And it would, yeah, but it would be nice if everybody had a choice to work for only the most perfect ethical companies, which there are none because there's
They really
flaws.
are. Like
Yeah,
even
and
companies
even
on one thing
yeah,
suck on others.
exactly. That's the thing because and even with nonprofit pro-life organizations that you volunteer for, they're going to have some blind spots. They're going to have some issues. I have my own issues with RPLA. I have
Mhm.
my own issues there
That's
too.
like yeah, I have issues with like pretty much any group I could probably find an issue with. I think we need to focus on the positives as well. And ultimately, when it comes to people's, like, we have to focus on what's positive about people, like, and about organizations, about people, about companies, whatever it may be. I feel like we spend way too much time being negative in our society. And, like, it's definitely important to, like, recognize the negatives and call them out. But I think we need to take a step back and realize that, like, sin exists. Humans are flawed. We have a very sinful nature, and humans are in charge of all these things. And ultimately, like, we're not going to be in a perfect society. If we were in a perfect society, we would be in heaven. That's the whole point. Like, I don't, yeah. So, like, I do talk negative a lot myself, and I do, like, tend to criticize. We all do, but, like,
Yeah.
ultimately, it's important to realize no one's perfect.
Well, yeah. Take for example. So my former dance teacher, her husband once told me that he had to remind her that the pastor of their church is still only a man. He's not God, basically, because
Yeah.
she was like idolizing the pastor kind of a thing. Like, but what happens is people they get so hung up on a person, and then you got to realize that perfect person. Even Taylor Swift isn't perfect, as much as we would like to
No.
think she is. She's got a few issues herself, but yeah, nobody's perfect. Yeah, and it's kind of like it's just like chess. We all make mistakes sometimes. It's kind of like that, honestly.
Mhm.
But I think that if you get the positive of the message that a person or an organization, but if you get that message, you can take that message. Like, for example, I think that the vegan organization PETA, I think they do some good work, obviously, because they do bring awareness of veganism to people. But I don't agree with everything they do either. You know, and
Mhm.
people think that being a vegan is that, oh, you must be like everything of this organization and what they do, and it's like, or that's just stereotyping, and the stereotypes unfortunately are true a lot of the time, but
That's
not
why there's
true.
stereotypes. Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm sure you could probably resonate with this, Anna. You probably the stereotypes are basically a prejudice that we form because we're trying to protect our own mind, or we're trying to simplify life.
Mhm.
So we like to think, oh well, all Christians are this way, or all vegans are this way, or all people who
Yeah.
work at Walmart are this way. And also, don't look at me as an example of a Walmart employee because nobody else there is quite like me. So.
Yeah, same. Like, yeah, I think we all, yeah, that's very true. We all have individuality, and, like, stereotypes are how they are. And yeah, I think it is a prejudice. But it's something that, I don't know. Like, we need to just make sure we take the time to get to know people, as opposed to
Yeah,
just kind of judge.
because when you get to
Yeah.
know people on an individual level, it's a whole thing. It's different because you end up hearing things about people, either individuals or about groups of people. And as a transgender person, like, I really, really don't like the things people are assuming about me just because there might be some unfortunate things that other transgender people do. Like, that's just not cool. And people who get to know me on an individual level, they know what I'm about. But unfortunately, people, well, that's kind of like people who watch the movie but don't read the book, right? It's like the lazy way of evaluating people. Like, yeah, you can get the gist. Like, if someone tells you they're a Christian or a vegan or transgender or a chess player or whatever, you can kind of get a basic idea of what they might be about by the label. But it's like you got to get to know the person, just like you got to read the book to really know why the movie was made, and sometimes when they make movies, they get it so wrong, and they are not faithful to the book either.
Yeah. And a lot
Like,
of times these labels that we put on ourselves, like, everybody has a different perspective of what that label even means. Even when it comes to, like, okay, if someone says they're Catholic, for example, like, even to be
yeah,
specific, like, say that I'm Catholic. Like, lots of people say that, and they aren't even actually Catholic. Like, they just claim to be. And it's like, and it's very easily proven, because what should be defined as Catholic is very specific. Like it's even more specific than like saying you're a Christian. Like saying you're a Christian is a lot more of a broad category. If you are a Catholic, you are supposed to be believing all of the Catholic teachings. But like what like it's supposed to be like a blind belief in like whatever the Catholic Church says type thing.
Right.
And like a lot of people don't define it that way. And it's like I don't and you can't really argue with people's definitions of things. But like we had someone yesterday who literally said that he's Catholic while he works at an IVF clinic and supports abortion and also like just other things where he was just saying where I was like, I don't, that's not the Catholic Church, even the Catholic Church is both against IVF and against abortion. So like, I don't, how are you Catholic? I don't get it.
That's the
And the
thing.
same is true for like vegan. The same is true for pro-life. The same is true for everything. Everybody has these
Yes.
different definitions of what it means.
Yeah, that's my point exactly. People get hung up on these labels, and like with the Catholics, for example, there are certain things that the Catholics believe that I think are actually might be cool. Obviously, like the things you just mentioned, but and like. But obviously, I can't be a Catholic because I'm not going to accept everything at a whim of what the Catholic Church decides is true. That's the thing. That's like putting too much trust in an organization instead of God, you know, or even your own mind. You'd be better off with than just an organization of leadership that can just change and just do a 180. But yeah, I feel like one thing I will say about is that it does seem like Catholics are, because they do have like a very strict set of beliefs, they seem almost more legit than Protestants, just because with Protestants, they're so splintered and there's all these different denominations within Protestantism.
That's why I don't identify as Protestant.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's
a whole other story, but I refuse to say I'm Protestant. If people push me, I'll be like, okay, whatever, but like I'm not gonna say it.
Right, exactly. Because first of all, if someone's a Protestant, then what are they protesting? Because that's where the name comes from. What are you protesting? And and
I think it's supposed to be like you're coming from the group that protested the Catholic Church or whatever, but like I don't think that like so I go to a Baptist church. Like I'll just give a brief summary of what I mean, but like I go to a Baptist church and we don't trace ourselves through Catholicism. Like there isn't a point where we say like, oh, we used to be part of the Catholic Church and then we separated. Like a lot of Protestant denominations do say that because for a lot of them that's true. But I think it's important to recognize that like not every Christian was Catholic, like even right after Jesus. Like the Catholic Church didn't come around until I don't know the exact years, so I don't want to just spitball, but some amount of time after Jesus' passing. Like the original Christians were like the people following Christ, the apostles, like the disciples, like the people that they reached, and when Jesus was here and afterwards that he reached and that his people reached, and so on and so on. It was like meeting in people's homes, like talking about what Jesus has done, like all these like kind of guidelines. They didn't even have a physical Bible at that point. Like it was just like a collection of letters, a collection of like what had been taught, right? So like we can trace who we are back to that, like back to the apostles, back to the disciples, back to Jesus, and like go through and say like we were like literally always there, like in one way or another. And I think that makes a lot more sense to me than saying like, oh, the Catholic Church was right and then they became wrong. That sounds a little crazy to me, and that's why I have an issue calling myself Protestant. I don't think the Catholic Church was ever like 100% this like governing authority. I think that there was times in the past where they were like closer to accurate, or like I'd have to look at the exact timeline of when they said this, that, the other thing to show kind of where that would be. But like, I don't think they have this governing like perfect authority like some Protestants.
Right. Yeah. Like whereas the Catholic Church, they might claim they're the original, the definitive.
They do. Yeah, that's what they say. They say that the original Christians, and I'm like, that doesn't even make sense. But you can't argue with them.
Right. Yeah. That's just a waste of time. But yeah, it's sort of like, for example, I know it's cliche. I do this a lot, but like the game of chess as it is today, it wasn't always that way. you
Mm.
know, like originally chess and several other similar games all descended from chaturanga, an ancient Indian board game, and then it is split off into, shogi in Japan and shangxi in China and makruk and other names I can't even pronounce, all these different games. Whereas like the chess as we know it today, which has become the world's most popular board game, has actually had a lot of influence from like the French and the British, like the royalty. There's a lot of decisions that were made in the past that have changed the chessboard, changed the rules, and chess has been basically in its current form for, if I'm not mistaken, about 500 years. About 500 years or so, we've had chess in its modern form, and so the rules have been standardized for that long. But there are much older games with similar elements. But the reason I'm mentioning this though is it's kind of like the same thing with Christianity, because yes, there was the original people who talked to Jesus, knew him directly, heard him teach, and witnessed all these things. And then other things like the Catholic Church came along later. And even though it may have been based on some things back then, information is always lost over time. And I think that's the unfortunate thing
Yeah.
because, well, like, okay, because we live in the 21st century and things are different now than they were back then, because now we have video and audio recordings and and almost
Mhm.
anybody can read or write. We're literate, and
Yeah.
so nowadays it's much easier to preserve the information, to find out what Anastasia said, what Chastity said. It's very easy to find out exactly what we said, exactly what we did, whereas going back 2,000 years, not so easy, not so easy,
Yeah.
and I think like, for example, I mean, this is kind of my spiritual approach. Is I kind of think, well, if somebody considers the history they do have access to, if they consider the holy text that they do have access to, but then also balance that with what God is telling them and their mind, and they can get all three to a reasonable agreement, almost like three branches of government in a way, if that makes sense. Because if you were to just, because if you did just one of those three that I mentioned, like if you just went by your own mind, you'd run into trouble, obviously, because my mind is
Mm.
not perfect. I make mistakes in chess. If you go only by with the most ancient text that you can find,
Yeah.
which is that you probably don't understand anyway in its original context and language, that can lead you into trouble. And if you only go by what you think God is telling you, then it might really just be what you want to think, what you want to believe, and that could also lead you straight what only by that too. And so it's almost like I've had to learn to balance myself in a way where if it's easy to get all excited about an idea or thing and think this is the answer, but that's like using only one type of Pokemon in the game Pokemon, for
Yeah.
example. Have you played
I
Pokemon?
tried. I tried that once, and it didn't go well.
Hey, it was all the rage in the 90s,
No, I mean I liked Pokemon. I mean I tried having only one type and beating the
Oh, so
game.
you
It
know
didn't go
exactly what
well.
I'm talking
Yeah.
about. So like, yeah, so like let's say you're
I mean,
using
I think
all
you can do it with one type, but it is a lot more difficult. I
you
gave up.
basically you have
At
to
some
power
point, I was
level.
like, I can't. Like, I think I tried all water types, and I think I was at, or maybe it was all, whatever. I tried all one. I don't remember. This was years ago, but I got to
Yeah,
one gym where it was like this. All my type was completely weak to everything they had, and I was like,
yeah.
I'm even
Well,
20
I
levels
wa-
above them. I can't do it.
yeah, well, see, and here's the thing. I'm glad you understand that reference because
Hmm.
I did the exact same thing. Because what do you think I did? I taught myself all the ponyta in like red, blue, yellow, and like I just steamrolled the Elite Four by over leveling my horses as much as I could. But
Yeah,
they're
yeah,
fire
that's what I
type.
do. Yep, yep, yep.
Yeah. So Ponyta and Rapidash are fire types. So then when you go up against Lorelei with their water attacks and stuff like that, then without over leveling by a lot, you can't do it very well. But that's what
Yeah, and
it's
even
like.
when you're over leveled, it's like it's still super effective. So it's like you're still getting a chunk of your stuff gone each time, and your attacks are super ineffective. So it's
Yeah,
like,
unless you're using Mewtwo, because Mewtwo, the legendary, which you can only get after you beat the Elite Four, Red, Blue, Yellow, is
like you can
overpowered.
teach them anything, right?
Well, now, yeah, interestingly, there was Mew and Mewtwo. See, Mew was one of those mythical ones that you could only obtain from events, but could literally learn any move. And Mewtwo was index 150, and was basically what after you beat the Elite Four, you could go and you could catch Mewtwo. And Mewtwo was just overpowered because you could use the TMs to teach him Thunderbolt, Ice Beam, Fire Blast. Like you could just give him all the elements basically and just completely destroy anything in the original Red, Blue, and Yellow game.
Yeah.
So yeah, so they later nerfed him big time. Anyway, yeah, that's some Pokemon nerdiness because it was all the rage back in the 90s. Now,
Yeah.
now, of course, yeah.
I was just gonna say, can we take a very quick restroom break?
Yeah, I need to as well. Yeah, that's just perfect. We'll be right back after a short intermission. Hello again.
Hello.
Yeah. So, I had a thought while I was in the restroom, which happens a lot. I don't know. So, so yeah. Here's what I was thinking. I was thinking maybe we could talk about being being vegan or being transgender or intersex or even having ADHD, how these aspects of our personality and our brain affect our experience with Christianity or religion in general. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think sorry, my dog was distracting. I think when it comes to like some of those things, it really does. I mean, everything that makes you who you are, right? Like all the different aspects of like your personality, like what you identify as, what groups you belong to, things like that. That really like shapes who you are, and it shapes how you perceive things. And I think there's a lot of, I mean, I could go through a few of them. Like with ADHD, it makes me like a lot more um, chaotic, I guess, a lot more like needing excitement. So getting into reading required a lot of push. Um,
Mm.
but then that one's like a little bit minor. When it comes to like being vegan, for example, I think like I'm still vegan now. But like as I've gotten more and more into like what the Bible says and like reading all of that, I feel like I hear a hose. I don't understand. Anyway, I digress. Okay, so as I get more into reading things and as I like become deeper in my faith, I'm realizing that like as a vegan, it's kind of like some people really want to justify veganism using the Bible. And I think that's just not what the Bible says. I don't think it says that you're supposed to be vegan. I don't think it says that anywhere. I don't think it's a sin to be eating animals. But what I do think is that when you live in a society that is harming animals in this way and it's unnecessary, that animal abuse, I think almost everyone can agree, is sinful and it's a violation of God's creation. But I think people who are vegan and aren't Christian are hesitant to join Christianity or to like look into it because of the fact that the majority of Christians aren't vegans and because of the fact that the Bible allows eating animals. And I think like we really need to take a step back and look into context and like look at why the Bible allows eating animals, look at the history, and think of like the Bible wasn't written now. Like, do you know how hard it would be to be 100% vegan in like the Middle East in like 2,000 years ago? That sounds
Right.
like
That's
really
true.
difficult. Like, I mean, it's probably possible. I'm sure there was people who did that, but
Well,
like,
yeah. And
it'd
I know
be
I
really
would.
difficult. Like I don't even think like some people argue that Jesus was vegan. I think he probably ate a lot less animals than most people. But it doesn't necessarily say either way. I guess at the Last Supper it talks about like eating various things, but it doesn't necessarily mention that Jesus did. I think because it just wasn't important. Like some people use that to say like, oh, it doesn't say that he ate animals anywhere. But like to me, I'm like, I just feel like it's not an important detail. Like if you look at the perspective of someone writing down their experience and their recollection, like look, if you look at someone doing their experiences recollection as they're writing this story of what they saw with Jesus, I don't really think writing down what he had for dinner is important. Like it's not like veganism is a very modern idea and I think it's ethical and I think it's like what we should be doing, but we can't try to justify um, we can't look for the Bible to justify what we're doing. We need to look at the Bible to see what we're supposed to be doing, what God says, and like our instructions for life, and then use that to form our new connections when we go through Christ and become new. Become new. I think the same is true with intersex. I think like there is like when I was intersex, like I mean I still am intersex, not when I was.
Right.
I always but like when I was like an atheist, it's like it was a big hurdle to me because of the way that so many people in the Christian community would treat LGBT people and would kind of talk against LGBT people. And I think like being intersex and having it included in the acronym kind of builds a lot toward that it's kind of like LGBTQIA, the I is for intersex. And it's like some people who are intersex think that it should be that way. Some people don't. I kind of don't really care personally, but it is what it is. It's like I think it's a big hurdle to joining Christianity if you are intersex because you'll feel like nobody will accept you or that the Bible talks against you or whatever it may be, just in the grouping of like hearing all these people talk about the LGBT community. So I think like part of that problem is the way that Christians represent themselves and the way that Christians speak about people in the LGBT community. Really, I think it's important to actually be respectful and actually be loving toward people no matter who they are. And this idea of like a lot of Christians will say like love the sinner, hate the sin type thing, and regard it to a lot of things. You do hear it a lot when it comes to LGBT
Right.
community. I think as a Christian, I understand what they're saying and I get why they're saying it. But I think as an atheist or as an agnostic or someone who's just not following Christianity, when they hear that, they don't understand what it means and it's offensive. Like I don't think we should be saying things like that because if the goal is to get people to come closer to Christ, I think we need to level ourselves, not to necessarily like just like make things up or lie about what the Bible says, or when people ask questions, just give an answer that's not true to convince them to become a Christian. I think that would be wrong as well. That's blasphemy. That's literally not what you're supposed to do. But I think like just using these like little Christianese type conversations
Right.
to kind of advocate for things is just not helpful. And I think a lot of Christians are really guilty of that, and by leading people astray by not leveling yourself to their playing field. I think
Right.
intersex person, I would hear things like that and be offended because I'm like, okay, so what the heck do you want me to do if I'm not strictly male or female and you're trying to say this,
Right.
that, and the other thing?
Well,
It's
yeah,
so
like
like,
for what I see, when I see people trying to say that love the sin or hate the sin in regard to intersex people, like what is the sin that they think that they're talking about? Because that happens. Like
I think
they're
it's
so
not
ignorant.
educated.
And I think part, okay, first of all, yes, Christians do speak in a sort of Christianese. They use terminology that they understand that the rest of the world doesn't. So it's ultimately not that helpful. But then there's also their ignorance on their part when it comes to gay and transgender and intersex and asexual people. I mean, actually, about that, with the asexuality, that's even confusing right there. That's so confusing because there's like it's splintered off into basically different denominations at this point. You have the asexual person who is like me, where it's like, well, I'm not interested in sex, don't want it, I'm just celibate for life. That's easy. That's one kind. But then there's also the asexual porn star who does it for money. So there's that. So I'm saying, people are not getting an accurate representation of labels because if somebody calls himself a Christian, or for example, and then they treat people badly, then that gives a bad meaning to that label, a bad association in the mind of those people that are negatively affected, obviously. And the same is true for the LGBT. It's same for any label like we're talking about. And I go through life and I'm aware that I will not be accepted in most Christian communities. Like, I could not, like, I personally, I don't think I could join like a strictly Christian based pro life organization. I would not be treated well. Like, that's how I feel. And that's part of why I'm part of our Rainbow Pro Life Alliance, because I feel like even though we're not doing as much as we should be doing, and I want to improve things with them, and I like talking to them anyway. It's like I have to go where I know I'm accepted. That's a
Mhm.
huge deal for me, and it is sad because I want everybody to love everyone, respect everyone, and it's just really sad that we get caught up on these labels. And I know that there have been some people who have even harshly criticized you as you were posting more about being a Christian and stuff. There were some people who were not happy about it. I saw the comments, so
Mhm.
and I think people. I just want to say give Anna a chance, because people. What happens is all the hostility they've had against the Christians, people who call themselves Christians, who abuse them, then that gets transferred on to people who haven't done them wrong too. That's another thing that's very frustrating, and I don't know. How do you like now? How do you feel being part of your church? Like, how do you feel how they accept you?
I feel like they accept me pretty well. I think like when it comes to my church, like the pastor has like an intersex person in their family. So like they're kind of already aware of it, and I think like it's just something they already knew what it was. And I think even the people who like it's not like I talk about it all the time. It's not really a priority topic in my life at this point in time. But when I have like brought it up or when it's come up in conversation or whatever, I think the people who are like hesitant to quote unquote like accept kind of just don't know what it is. And
Yeah.
it really is this ignorance of, not that they're like an ignorant person, but of the word, like it's just they don't know what intersex is and don't understand what is being talked about. So I think ultimately though, like if people know what intersex is and figure out that I'm intersex, I don't think I'm treated any differently than any other woman. I feel like, I mean, when it comes to dating, that might be a different thing, but in terms of like just my church and like the way that people around me associate, like I don't feel any kind of push from anybody, if that makes sense.
Right. And I do think now some things are also easier to blend in with. Like
Mm-hmm.
like like if you take the LGBTQIA, for example, not all of those things face the exact same stigma in society because a person who is intersex or asexual can be that way without anybody even knowing about it. It is possible because if you didn't tell people you were intersex, they just wouldn't know. You do only to educate people. That's the main purpose of it. And someone who's asexual can also just fly under the radar, And in fact, that's very easy too. Because I feel like the issue more for the LGBT community it comes specifically with people who are gay or transgender. I feel like because it's often viewed as a sin when somebody does, correct what is a mismatch in their body with through hormones or surgery. People tell them they're sinning, and I certainly get that a lot. And then when it comes to the gay people, there's some people who are fine with gay marriage, and some people who are just against the concept that people can have a loving relationship with the same sex. And so that's where they really butt heads, and so it can be hard for many people.
Yeah. I mean, I think definitely when it comes to other aspects of like besides intersex, like the other and asexual, I really don't understand when people think asexual. Like that doesn't make any sense to me. But like besides asexual and intersex, I think there's ways to exist within a Christian lifestyle and still have those those kind of like identities per se. I think like that when we think of the LGBT community, I think a lot of conceived notions come in there. That like if you identify as gay, that you're doing this. If you identify as trans, that you're doing this. And I think like kind of we were talking about earlier, like stereotypes, like judging. I think that is definitely a problem. But I also think as Christians, we're like called to like protect our testimony, right? So like, for example, even though I'm intersex and I don't really have an issue with the I being in the LGBT acronym, like it doesn't really bother me. It just is what it is, and it just is. I don't have like a rainbow flag in my bio anymore. And that doesn't mean that I don't support people who are, and like, because I had way too many conversations with people ask me why I had that there and ask me if I supported like this or if I supported this. And I'm like, no, I just support people having equal rights and I support people being able to live their life the way they need to, even if it's not necessarily something that I would religiously like say is okay. And I think like there's also ways within that acronym, like all those people of those varying identities, to still be following Christ and not be living like a sinful lifestyle. I just think protecting our testimony is important and making sure that people don't have preconceived notions about us. But yeah, I think I forgot the original question, but essentially, like, yeah, essentially, like, I think that just because somebody's trans or just because somebody's gay or just because somebody's whatever doesn't necessarily mean that they aren't following God or isn't a Christian. I think, like, for example, you were mentioning earlier that you just plan on being celibate. Like, I don't personally see an issue with someone who plans on being celibate, but, like, then is attracted in a different way or, like, whatever it may be. I don't really think that's the opposite of God's word. I think if we talk about like even taking the Bible as it is, which I do genuinely believe everything in the Bible is truth, including like things that Paul has written. I don't think that somebody being gay or being trans is necessarily a sin. It's like actions that are described as sinful, like the actual intimate acts and things like that between people of the same sex, for example. I don't think that there's an issue with having an attraction or having gender dysphoria and settling that in any way that feels appropriate to you. I think that the issue becomes then accepting further things. Just like if somebody, for some reason, like I'm going to say something really random that's obviously not the same thing, but let's say like somebody has an inclination that they want to like, that they're always like want to commit like bank robberies. A totally different thing. Obviously,
Right.
obviously we understand that like robbing a bank would be a sin. I think if someone is a bank robber who just never robs banks, like it's not a problem. Like if you're dealing with that type of like desire or that type of whatever it may be, I don't see an issue with that because we all have sins that we struggle with, and we all have things that we want to do that are sinful that we have to decide to follow God instead. So there are some like Christians I know who identify as gay or lesbian or whatever who just plan on being like celibate, and that to me, I don't see an issue with that at all. And I think a lot of Christians, if they took the time to actually consider this and label it out, I think they would agree. However, there's just so much of a force of people wanting to say like, no, it's all sinful, like identifying that way as sinful, whatever it may be, that I struggle to think that we'll actually get to that point of like people being able to acknowledge that people deal with whatever they deal with, and it's more the specific actions and choosing to do something as opposed to just having a want to do something, if that makes sense. Lusting is wrong too. So like if you're actively like cycling through like wanting XYZ in your head, that would be an issue as well. But for the most part, yeah, I just the way people work.
Well, yeah, and here's the thing that's interesting about it, is that the concept that we may have a certain desire or attraction or whatever that we don't necessarily have to act on. I feel like that's something that's important to keep in remembrance of because, like, oh what? Wait, oh, it's 3:30. Oh man, yeah. But yeah, so I just want to finish up my thought because I will have to get ready for my ride that's coming at 4. But I had a thought in my head and I want to get this out. This idea that you can have an attraction or a feeling or a desire that you do not necessarily act on is something that needs to be reminded. People need to be reminded of because on the one hand, people can be like, oh no, you can't, no, nothing gay is okay, and everybody has to be straight, married, and have a dozen children. That's one. Some people think that's the way, and that everybody should be that way. And then somebody like me, I kind of like this idea. And this has been on my mind recently. See, it's already well understood that people, for example, who are sexually attracted to children should not act on that desire. If, that's obviously something that people should not act on for many reasons. And so I feel like people can take the same concept that not everything we desire to do is healthy for us or other people. I feel like so we can absolutely agree on that.
Mm-hmm.
I think really what the issue is, what the debate over LGBT issue and Christianity really is, we're dealing with semantic details. We're dealing with certain details about what certain people's opinion is, what they think is acceptable or not. And people are going to vary in regard to that. But you are think that a person can be, gay, lesbian, transgender, queer, intersex, asexual, but still follow Christ, still find a place within Christianity. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think that I think people who identify that way can find Christ and can get closer to Him. I also feel that as we get closer to Christ and as we learn more of His Word and have a closer relationship with Him, I do also feel like He will change you and will guide you into being what He wants for you. And I think for some people, it may be that they are called to do outreach into the LGBT community and that they still have those kind of thoughts or desires that they kind of have to put aside and bear their cross and do what they need to do to follow God. And I think there's other people who will end up changing the idea of who they're attracted to. Even if you think of it in a sense of let's not even think about genders, everyone I think could agree that it would make a lot of sense that if as an atheist you're attracted to people who have a certain body type or a certain look or certain whatever demographic about them, but then as you become a Christian, those people don't look attractive to you anymore. You'd rather be with someone who's following God or can guide you, or even body style and type of things. You can become attracted to someone differently based on the fact that you yourself are changing internally. And I think the same is true when it comes to gender. Even I think there literally are people who fully 100% were either gay or lesbian or me. I feel like I identified as pansexual. I mean, I did identify as pansexual, and I genuinely feel like I'm not attracted to women anymore. But I think there's people who are gay, lesbian, bisexual, even transgender people. There are those that have come to Christ and then ended up changing how they feel about themselves or about other people. And I think that's very valid as well. I don't think that necessarily everybody will completely change the way they perceive the world or perceive themselves or perceive others. But with God, anything is possible. And it's either you would still have that internally, but have to follow Christ to make it to heaven, to be a follower of Christ. There is a certain guideline you have to do there. But I definitely don't think we should be counting people who are part of the LGBT community as too far gone or not worth reaching, or that they can't even go to church or they can't read a Bible, because ultimately, how is anyone going to get closer to God if we don't allow them there in the first place? So
Yeah,
I don't know if that answers the question, but yeah.
yeah, thank you. Yeah, see, this is good. See, the reason I mentioned the stuff I have in this episode basically is, I want to bridge the gap. I want to bridge the gap between, the church and the LGBT community, because it's kind of essential, and because there's a conflict, there's misunderstanding, there's ignorance, and I want everybody to actually have the conversation, learn to understand each other's perspectives, and I feel like we can do better as a society. And I also think
Yeah.
I also don't want anybody to think for a minute that just because you go by the label of Christian, that all of a sudden you're going to start hating the gays. I don't want anybody to think about you, Anna, because you were not that person.
Yeah, and I don't think I hate anybody. I think I do speak out about it a lot more in the terms of having religious conversations, and in the terms of at least thinking or recognizing that things aren't the way God wants for people. I think I do think more of that and do even say more of that in conversations. But the idea of just hating everyone who's gay, there are some Christians that 100% do that they think they're the enemy or that they're whatever. And I think that's wrong. Speaking out about it is one thing. Showing hate toward a group of people is just not acceptable, and we shouldn't be doing that.
Yeah, then yeah, certainly in agreement there. I feel like we talked about a lot of good stuff, and we even got to throw in some Pokemon references too. That was
Yeah.
fun. That was fun.
We should definitely schedule. I mean, I get you got to get to work, but we should definitely schedule something for maybe a 30-minute meeting at some time soon where we can go through the comments on the intersex post and just focus on like those comments so we can get that done. But I think this was a very very productive, like kind of free form, especially when it comes to like kind of talking about religion and all that kind of stuff. I think it was a good conversation. So if we want to schedule something soon, just reach out to me in a message, and I would definitely be down to just kind of read comments with you and make comments about the comments or whatever.
Yeah, totally.
But yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like this has been a very productive talk. So thank you for joining me. Yeah, and we should definitely do more podcasts in the future. We could definitely cover that. So yeah, but this has been very, very good. It's also been a really good chance to catch up with you, see how life's going with you lately. Because I do miss your presence at the Zoom meetings with RPLA. You always had a lot to add.
I hope they're going well. How many people are on the board at this point?
Well, okay. Now we've had a few people join. We've had Lydia and then Catherine. We've had a few new people join, and then Clementine left right after you left. So I don't know what was up with that, but yeah. So it's good. I enjoy the meetings. I enjoy talking with those people. They seem to like having me. So.
All right. Well, yeah. So we'll talk again soon, and yeah, hope everything goes well with your pro-life work. Let me know if you ever want to do something pro-life related as well. I don't know if you guys like plan on doing protests or anything, but yeah, just keep me updated.
Yeah, I'm open to suggestions too. If you have any suggestions you want to send my way, something that I might be able to participate in with my limited schedule, maybe, Yeah, so just let me know. So we'll stay in touch. Thanks, Anna.
Bye. Bye.